We're live. They're going to start screaming. Beep, beep.
Live? Let me pour myself a drink before we start this Friday night transformation talk.
Nice. Cheers.
Now I'm ready.
All right.
So this video is called, Chad said beep beep. Did you say that when we went on? Oh, I didn't hear that. I was really focusing on pouring myself this drink, which is water, as far as everybody knows. So this is called Talking with Michelle. we figured, hey, what a perfect title. And for those of you that have ever talked to Michelle before, then it will be referring to an experience that you, I think, will value, may or may not enjoy in the moment, depends, but at least value the purpose of it and so forth. So let's just talk some transformation.
Okay. Beep, beep.
You want to tell the story behind that?
Well, do you want to tell the story of your experience and then I'll back them into it?
Yeah, sure. So I don't know how long ago it was, maybe a few weeks ago. I just heard Michelle go, beep, beep. I was like, what are we, the Road Runner? Like, did you just see Wile E. Coyote or something? And so then she told me. So she did. At first, I actually thought you did something else, and I thought I was being funny when I was like, oh, I thought you said beep, beep. And you were like,
I did.
I did. Oh, okay.
It's actually a command that my dogs know, and it means for them to get out of the way. Like, it's just that, like, I'm coming through, beep, beep. And so they get up and they move. So if they're like what they were doing. So I had my video camera on before we started, and I had gone to the restroom to grab a tissue, and I came back in, and two of my dogs were lying in the doorway, right, of my office. So you heard me say, beep, beep to my dogs to get up and get out of the way.
That was amazing. We should incorporate that into neurotransformational coaching. So like somebody has a belief that shows up, like, I think I'm not good enough. Beep, beep.
That's amazing.
You go away. You beep, beep. Yeah, well, so, and we have those of you that are watching live or watching the recording early enough, tomorrow we're doing a whole series of coaching demos and real coaching sessions. So how many people can we just heal with the new meep strategy? We got to spell it with an M.
That's amazing. Well, Leslie is actually Leslie, I hope this is accurate to say that you're like a trainer, you train dogs, and she says it is an entirely legit dog command. I agree. It is in my house.
Perfect.
Beep, beep, belief. I might need that on a t-shirt. Just beep, beep.
Beep, beep. Beep, beep, belief.
Oh,
nice.
I like it.
All right. Well,
whew.
What are you thinking about? Who are you in this moment? What do you want to talk about? Transformation, coaching.
Yeah. So who I am in this moment is somebody who is fascinated by and have been really interested in, like, understanding, like at a scientific level, which is one of the reasons that I love learning with you and studying with you, to what Catherine shared on the video yesterday. You're such a great teacher about this, is really understanding how what we experience in our lives as children, like legitimately puts like fingerprints right on the neural pathways in our brains that absolutely set us up, right, to be the adults that we are. And that every single adult, what I just read maybe 20, 30 minutes ago, was that every single adult like just has like children, right, behind them. And so everybody that we see walking along the street, right, has children behind them. And for me, the more that I understand that, the more that it opened up compassion for myself as an individual, as well as understanding that, the same is happening with you, right? And so the way that you move through the world and how you behave and how you interact and the experiences that you have and your relationship with your body and how you respond in times of stress, like all of that they're truly learned behaviors from when we were kids. And that I might mess this up, but something that I read earlier said that the child is the father of the adult.
Hmm.
And I had to repeat it because I was like, wait a minute, what? But it's the way I understand it, and what it means to me is that what we learn in our childhood absolutely shapes and then parents, right, the adult that we become. And that the cool thing is that our brains were incredibly malleable, right, when we created all these neural pathways and we created the stories that make up like the essence of our bodies, and our brains are still malleable. So everything that we learned, we can absolutely unlearn, right? So all of the experiences that we have and all of the pathways that were created and the patterns that were created, our brains didn't stop being malleable. So there's so much hope for me in understanding that it's yes, this might be the root of where these behaviors that we're experiencing now, where they are like sourced from, where they were learned. And it doesn't mean we have to stop there, right? That understanding allows us to then say, okay, what is it that we want to create moving forward? And do I still want to create, allowing the child, right, to mother the woman now, or do I want to start to make changes? And something that I've learned about myself and a lot of the clients that I work with is that just understanding, one of the things that you say, Sean, regularly that I love is that we actually don't have any control over anything that we don't understand, right? And so many of us, I mean, y'all let me know in chat if this is you. I like to control. And one of my like trauma responses is to even increase control. So if I feel like I'm in a place where I need to surrender, I'm in a place where I need to just, be okay with not knowing, right? Take building a coaching business, not knowing if the video, if the post or the thing or the event or whatever I say yes to, is this really going to be the thing? My learned behavior was to fight, was not to surrender, right? Like I learned to fight. That surrender was more weak, and surrender means death. I actually started writing something yesterday that said that I'm just relearning that surrender doesn't mean death. It's what gives me life. It's what allows me actually to live, and also to understand that feels traumatic to the part of me that just learned how to fight. And I say all that to say that the more I understand it, the more I understand where those patterns started, the more I understand the child that created those behavior patterns, then the more compassion I can have for myself in the moment when that like acts up. And instead of beating myself for this thing that's here again or acting up again, I can understand it with just so much more like just love and gentleness and compassion. And I got to tell you, the more that I hold that for myself, dude, the way that I love like humans, I mean, like 6 months ago, I felt like my heart was almost like breaking, but like breaking open. Like I was having like chest pains of my heart from like the depth of love that I was feeling because of just the continued increased compassion for myself and for humanity. And I really want people to know that all of the behaviors, I mean, this has become such a passion for me, because I think a lot of us don't realize how great we're actually doing with our sabotage, right? Like we're actually doing a really good job, right? So all of our perfection, all of our procrastinatism, all of our addictions, whatever they are, drugs, alcohol, porn, work, any of those things, we're actually doing a really good job. They're serving a purpose. They're actually not the problem. And so much of the personal development industry is about focusing on the things that are the solution to what the real problem is underneath it. The real wound is the real thing that needs healing. And the more that I've been in this work and studied with you and in our community and studied on my own and been a client and 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 worked with clients and worked with clients and worked with clients, the more I really understand that I don't even need to mess with all of that. It's fine if you want help with your perfectionism. Okay. But what we're going to look at is actually what's triggering that. What's at the root of your indecision? Because your indecision isn't the problem. Your indecision is the solution. What's at the root of your procrastination? Because your procrastination isn't the problem. It's the solution. And really, when we understand this and understand how the brain works and really get as scientific as you want to get with it, like understanding of the human, then all the other details that we tend to stress out about, right? Like they don't matter at all. Like they just dissolve because there's no longer a problem that my perfectionism needs to protect. And that's life. Yeah. So I'm geeked up. I'm geeked up about tomorrow and being able to see some humans get liberated. And I'm so excited about continuing to dive in to really understanding myself at deeper depths so that I can help the people that we work with in our community and the clients that I serve be able to do the same. I mean, it's everything. Yeah. You're on mute. I didn't do that though.
Finally, I was muted and you didn't do it.
I didn't do it.
So that is possible. There's a simplicity to what you're saying, that the problems that we see on the surface are actually not the problems. And that's one of the reasons why people just continue wrestling with all the symptoms. The simplicity is that those symptoms all have just a few root causes.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot. There's just a handful.
Mm-hmm.
But we have millions of manifestations of the problems.
Oh, yeah.
Millions of different patterns and techniques and addictions and overcompensation strategies and all that stuff. And there's so many different details for each one of us individually. But the simplicity of human behavior is actually quite shocking. And that's exciting for those of you that want to do this work in any capacity. It's actually really exciting to know that you can study something simple rather than study all of the things that are complicated.
Right.
And I've never had anybody hire me or come to our company and ask for help with complication. Like, you know what? My life is just a little too simple. So can you help me complicate things?
Right.
I've never heard that.
Right.
And I'm sure those words have never been spoken. We come with all the complication that we ever need and or that we've manufactured. And the reality is the answer to the complication is simplicity. But I think so many people dismiss the simple solutions because I think we think that if the problem is complicated, the solution must be complicated.
It better be. I've been working on this for a long time.
Yeah, that's a big one right there. What if you see the problem, or what if you see a solution to a problem that you've been working on for a long, long, long time? And the solution is either something so simple that it's actually embarrassing that you didn't solve it over all those years, or it's something that you've seen before and either somebody told you or you came across it yourself, but you didn't implement it or you didn't commit to it or you just dismissed it, but it actually is the thing that's going to stop the sabotage pattern or going to heal you in whatever way you're looking for, or just help you achieve your goals or what have you. What if it's something that you've seen before, but you just didn't open the package? Either one of those two things are really irritants to the ego.
Mm-hmm.
And we would much rather, our ego would much rather spend more time solving the problem it's been working on for a long time.
That's right.
Especially when it's decided what the solution is. It would much rather spend more time because, you know, what's a few more months if you've been working at this for 30 years?
That's right.
It's a few more months.
Yeah.
But if you adopt the simple solution, then it feels like you've been doing the wrong thing for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Or you should be ashamed that you didn't get this before.
Right.
And what we need to understand is that our ego hates what I just said more than continuing the pattern. It hates the idea that it's been wrong this whole time. Yeah. It hates the idea that it needs to start over or that it needs to admit that it was being fooled by the things that it was working on or any of that sort of like, I don't know what the opposite of stroking the ego is. It's like poking the protection or emasculating the ego or embarrassing the ego. You know, I don't know the word that fits the best, but it's more destructive to the ego to actually admit that you've been doing the wrong thing for all this time than it is to adopt the right thing and change your life.
Yeah.
What we need to understand is that our ego is actually not committed to changing our life.
No, it wants to be right, not happy.
Yeah, it wants to be right and it wants to continue whatever's familiar.
Yeah.
One of the biggest realizations I had recently within the last couple of years is that the ego's essence is preservation.
Mm-hmm.
The ego is trying to preserve self-image.
Right.
And our self-image and the collection of all of our self-images, you know, if we talk about different personalities or different identities that we have, the collection of all of those is based on all the things that we've been doing up until now. Right. Going back to what you said about all the blueprint from our childhood and all the experiences we've had and literally every single experience we've had is in the ingredient of who we are.
Yeah.
And the majority of the foundational ones go all the way back to our childhood. So that's what creates the ego and the self-image, or let me say it a different way. That's what creates the self-image that the ego is trying to preserve.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if the collection of all those memories and if the collective self-image is based on things that are wrong, things that are beliefs that we made up when we were kids because we didn't know any better, or traumas that we experienced, or any of the other challenges that we've had in our lives. So if we had these experiences and then we try to protect ourselves from having those experiences again. And that's where our identities came from. And then the ego steps in and tries to preserve the identities that are not us in the first place. Then how can that turn out good? How can it defining, if we define good as happy and fulfilling and being rooted in who you are, right? It's like we've been putting on all these costumes, and then the ego's job is to make sure we never take them off.
Right.
So when we get new information and we're like, hey, what if we take off this costume that we literally put on for Halloween when we were 5 years old, or metaphorically put on when we were 2 years old or 10 years old? What if we actually take off this costume? Because it's getting hot and stuffy in here and I really want to breathe. The ego will be terrified of taking off that costume because you don't know who's underneath it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a really important concept, and it's a really deep concept. And I think people need to then understand, which is what we are so big stands for all the time, is that the removal of your costumes, it's not going to be fun. The removal of your costumes will trigger your doubts and your worries and your fears and your what ifs and any negative head talk, because all that stuff is tied to the costume. They're partners. And so if you're going to take the costume off, then you're going to disrupt all of those thoughts. But then what most people I think intuitively do, but it's like a learned intuition, is that when those thoughts come, it feels uncomfortable. So then they just put the costume back on.
Exactly.
If you start taking off your gloves and all these doubts and fears show up, the easiest thing to do to stop the doubts and fears is just put the glove back on. Just stop whatever just triggered all that stuff. So then we put the costume back on. And it feels like we just settled ourselves back into enjoyment or back into comfort, which we did. But the comfort is based on familiarity. It's not necessarily based on authenticity. That's not really who we are. We're just used to not being who we are.
Yeah, and I don't even know if we're comfortable. I think we're just used to the discomfort. Yeah, I mean, and that to me is one of, like, that's worse, right? Because the actual discomfort is the new, right? The uncomfortable is in the new, and like we talk about, right? The uncomfortableness there is so temporary. We just don't get to the other side. We stop in the middle. Right. It's like getting a shot and stopping at the part where it hurts the most and just holding there. But if you just push the thing in and then pull it out, then the pain, like, it stops. It gets better. And we go back to where we were before because we're used to it. And we think used to it means comfortable. And it doesn't. Like, just because you don't even notice that your knee hurts anymore because that's how long it's been hurting, doesn't mean that your knee doesn't hurt. It just means that you don't notice it anymore. And I think that is the saddest place. I'd rather stay aware. I want to be aware of what hurts. I want to embrace, at least for me and where I'm at now, I want to embrace the pain, because it's a sign, it's a signal. There's something there. There's an aliveness. There's an ache there. There's a desire there. There's something that's there. And so I want to feel into that. I don't want to go into the place where I'm numb and I don't feel anything. And then I just get used to the numb and I lie to myself and convince myself that it's comfortable and that I'm fine when I'm not fine. I'm just not feeling.
Yeah, and the word, or the two words that we use quite often based on whether we're used to it or not, is generally either right or wrong. So if we're used to it, meaning it's familiar to us, then we generally call that right.
That's right.
And if we're unfamiliar with something, we're not used to it, then we call that wrong.
Exactly.
And as soon as we say something is wrong, our entire body will work in concert to fix that problem. because none of us want to be wrong. We don't want to be wrong intellectually. We don't want to be wrong emotionally, spiritually, physically. We don't want to be wrong. So if we're using familiar or not to determine right or wrong, the only thing that we can use that recipe to do is to appease our ego, because our ego is deciding what's familiar and what's not familiar.
Yeah.
And I just want to highlight this point. Our ego is committed to preservation. It's not committed to growth. So when our egos are involved in our decision making, every decision it makes is anti-growth. Every decision it makes is anti-growth. So you're not going to get the ego to change the way it works. You just need something that's more powerful than it. You need something that cares for growth more than the ego cares for preservation. But most of us are just wrestling with the ego all this time and getting frustrated because the ego, which is, I think, the loudest voice in our head, especially when we're going in on ourselves and being negative, the ego has the bullhorn and our soul has the little whisper. So when we're listening to the bullhorn, when we're listening to the loud voice, we're making our choices according to preservation and safety. And then we get frustrated because the ego isn't our cheerleader when we want to do something big in our lives. And you just have to understand, it is biologically impossible for the thing that's in charge of keeping you safe and alive and out of danger to get excited about you walking off the path. Those two things, it just can't happen. It's not going to happen. So you need something that can tap into your rooted certainty or inspiration or purpose or vision or mission that will fuel you walking off the pre-paved path, because the ego will put borders on it and try to make sure you never come off of it. But then the only thing you can ever experience for the rest of your life is what you've already experienced. You can't have a new experience while staying inside the bumper rails of all of your old ones. And it's your ego's job to keep you on this path. And that's what is so frustrating to so many people, is that they're not creating new experiences in their life. And that's just because the ego is steering the car.
Yeah.
And fueling the tank.
Yeah. It's just we don't have the proper person leading for where we're trying to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just because that is how you've experienced things, if that is how you have experienced things or how you are experiencing things, the same thing, just believing like this is all there is. It's available for other people. It's not available for me. It always turns out this way. For me, it's just what Sean just described. That's all that's happening. And this goes back to the understanding that I was talking about at the beginning. When we understand that, when we recognize, oh, that's what's happening, we become aware, and then we can say, okay, like, I hear you, ego. I respect what your desires are here. Thank you so much. Appreciate the service. I'm actually going to go over here and do this thing, and we'll be okay. Right? I got this. You can sit down because I'm going to drive. I'm going to go over here. I'm not even going to ask you to try and drive because it's not your job. You don't know how to do that. You only know how to go on this one path. So I'm not even mad at you. I don't need to be mad at the ego. It's doing its thing. Let it do its thing. We're the ones that are able to step up in responsibility to say, I'm going to be the adult, right? I'm not going to act out in the role of the parent or the child. I'm going to be the adult, and I'm going to say, here's where we're going. Here's where I want to go. I'm going to make the decision. And then I'm going to be like the orchestra conductor and put the aces in places and call the people that I need in, the different parts of me in, to do the roles that they're designed to do, instead of getting mad that they're not doing the job that is not theirs to do. Let me run my effing symphony, right? Instead of being mad that people aren't doing what nobody's guided them or directed them to do. That's my job. I'm the conductor.
And with this idea of a symphony, the ego plays an instrument that's really useful in certain areas, just not growth and personal development and evolution.
Right.
And it is important for us to obviously preserve certain things like our life and our values and the things that are most important to us. And then they can work in concert together, but they need to stay in their lane, or in the, I don't know much about symphonies, but like, play when it's your time to play.
That's right.
And when it's somebody else's time to play, then shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. That's a great analogy. The conductor.
Yeah. And then all the like, the flute isn't less valuable than like the timpani. The timpani just drives the beat. So they have a different job. So I'm not mad at, the saxophone, right, for not being the piccolo, right? It's every piece has its role, and it's our job to understand that, all the different pieces of us. It's our job to understand that and have it work together in harmony, instead of believing to what you said earlier, right? That, well, that part's wrong. I don't need that instrument. I don't like the tuba, right? There's no harps here. Right? Yeah.
So one thing that's coming to mind that oftentimes we try to deny are certain emotions that we've decided, or people have decided for us, are not okay.
That's right.
Like anger or vulnerability is not an emotion. It's more of a state of vulnerability. Weakness, fear, we have learned that those things are not okay. So we don't allow it, or we don't want to allow it to play its role in the symphony. And the reality is, even those things that most of us would term negative are also not just okay and an allowable part of the symphony, but they're a valuable part.
Yes.
And when we start to value the things that we've been telling ourselves, or other people have been telling us, is negative, that's when the whole game completely turns upside down.
Yeah. In the best way possible.
Right.
Yeah. I really thought for a really long time, even when I started coming into ECCP and into the community, like I really thought like I needed to be fixed, right? There was something wrong with me. That's the language that I used. Fix me, right? Like this is a mess, right? And I need somebody else outside of me to make this better so that I can go out and function in the world. And the reality is that's not the case. And that's not what we believe inside of what we teach. It's not what we believe inside of what we train with the coaches. That's not what we do at ECCP. It's really the piece that's missing, right? And this could go in a whole bigger direction because it's so much more. Individuals make up the collection of humanity. So I'll just say that this has global impact. If we all just operate with a little bit more perspective and understanding and compassion within our own behaviors and why we behave the way that we do, why we feel the way that we do, and we operate in that way internally, the way that we can connect with each other, the way that we can move through the world, the healing work that is possible. I mean,
Staggering.
Yeah, it would literally change everything.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
So what do you want to say about ECCP?
It's humanity in its most beautiful and unfiltered and raw form. When I very first went, I didn't know if I wanted to even be a coach. I was not a coach. I had zero confidence in being a coach because the only thing I knew about being a coach is I had a coach, but I didn't have any desire. Well, that's not true. I had a desire. I didn't have any belief that it was actually possible for me. That's anything I could be good at. I bought a ticket and didn't go for like a year because I just kept making a bunch of really sexy excuses. That's my sabotage, right? And the only reason that I went into the room is because my wife, Amanda, bought me a plane ticket that said, we paid $5,000 for this thing. So I'm going to need you to go to that thing that we paid $5,000 for. And I was thinking about this actually earlier today. Like it's priceless. Like, and every experience, every one that I've been to has been so unique because the experience is like co-created with the people that are there. And because you, right, and now myself and every person that's in there is doing their own personal work, it's different. Like, you're not the same that you were in February. I'm not the same that I was in February. So it's not going to be the same because the humans are different. And just to be in a space where I got to really learn what was possible, and I got to sit with the things that really triggered me and activated me, but in a space that was so loving. You know, it really is an environment where while I was learning how to hold myself, I was held. While I was learning to have my own back, I had people that had my back. All of my emotions were not only like safe, but they were welcomed. They were encouraged. Doesn't mean they always got attention. They got ignored a lot. And that was also amazing. And I learned that I could be okay, that I could be with my feelings and be okay. I learned that in that space. Like, I had an embodied experience of that. And it's through actually peer coaching after ECCP in our like advanced, like third level of mastery certification, that I had one of the biggest breakthroughs where I won't say that today, but you know what? I'm not fine. Like, that was after ECCP, where I was trying to hold everything together and pretending that I was okay when I wasn't okay. And that was a huge like shift for me. And to actually have the awareness through the experience that like I was a good coach. Like, I wasn't a master coach. I hadn't done all the hours or logged all the things, but I was practicing and I was a good coach. Like, that was dope. I remember feeling that way and being like, I can do this.
Yeah.
And as far as like personal shifts, I can't even keep track. You asked me what my biggest breakthrough was. I could list 5 of them, right, without even thinking. There are so many. My whole life is different. entirely different. I look different. I act different. I speak different. I interact differently. My relationships are different. There are habits that were not that long ago that I don't do anymore. There's no need for some of the behavior patterns that were like, the protection patterns that we were talking about. Like, I don't have to pretend. I know my feelings are real. I know I'm safe within my own body. These people are my home. And to go from zero level of confidence and certainty as a coach, I don't know what the highest level is. I'm past that. That's where I am as a coach now. Like, and probably the best thing that I got from ECCP was me. I mean, I found a place where I could go through the process of coming back home, like, to my own body. I mean, I'd write you a blank check for that.
Yeah.
And now to be able to have the certainty that I can do that and do that for other people, it's life. ECCP is life. And that's not because I'm like, oh my God, I'm a Shawn fan. I don't like, I love you, like who you are. But I'm not a fan, I'm not a fan of you. I like you a ton. I love you a lot. It's me. Like, I know what is in me. I know how I experience the world now. And the two things that have been game changing, the two things that are non-negotiable in my life and in my business and for my clients is personal coaching and ECCP and a conversation. It's continuing education for me. I'm evolving, so I'm continuing to get to know myself better. And it's training in the work that I do with humans. So not going, it doesn't even, like, it's like, I don't, like, beep, beep, I don't get it. It just doesn't, it doesn't make sense to me. Those are the two things that are just non-negotiable for me. And I would say, because I've done this and been in this place for so long, there are so many stories that I don't even know if we could probably spend 5 days just telling stories in terms of my journey and experience inside of this work. But I've wondered, is this the right thing? Should I invest in this? Should I not invest in this? I don't really have the money. Let me say this. First of all, I never had the money. I know we're over time. I never had the money. When I came to ECCP, we had just been about to get our lights turned off. I've had to borrow the money every time. I've had to borrow the money until recently, right? Early on, I borrowed the money. I asked for loans from people. I remember one time, I don't know if I ever told you this, my cousin called my mama because he thought that I was using drugs, because I asked him, and I was like, I can't ask my mom again for money. And so he reached out to her because he thought that I was on drugs. I was like, no, I want to change my life. I got to figure this out. So I was hustling to make it happen. I waited tables for most of my coaching journey. I got to figure this out. I got to find a way to make it happen, because this, I mean, it's what I said earlier. It's non-negotiable for me to be in the work. And one of the things, and I used to ask this, how do I know if this is the right thing? How do I know? If now my thing is, if I'm asking, if there's an intuitive, is this for me? It's for you. Because if it wasn't, there wouldn't be the question. It wouldn't even be a consideration. You wouldn't still be watching this live at whatever time it is. I mean, it's 9:15 Eastern Standard Time on a Friday night. You're like watching me and Sean. What are you doing? Come to ECCP. That's how you know if you're asking. That's your yes. That's your yes. And you can choose to not, and that's okay too, because we'll be here doing what we're doing, and when you're ready, we'll be here doing what you're doing. But this world now needs humans who hold themselves with compassion and grace and understanding and curiosity so that they can go out into the world and hold other humans with the same. Yeah.
So I have one question
Uh-oh.
that came to me as you were deep diving there. When you said, I know we're over time, were you talking to us or were you talking to your dogs?
I was talking to you.
Oh, okay. Because I had the feeling that you were talking to your dogs.
Telling them, like, I know. I told you 30. I fed them first, though. Oh, my gosh. We just released the YouTube video today where I wagged my
Oh, boy. Really?
Oh, my gosh.
Where your tail showed up?
Yeah, where my tail showed up and I started barking. I mean, and to be honest, so it's stuff like that if you think about it, really, like even a year ago, let alone, are you kidding me? 5 years ago, that would have shut me down.
You'd have been mortified.
I'd have been more. And instead, my dog, if you have not watched the YouTube video, my dog literally stands behind me in such a way that it looks like I have a tail. And so instead of like being mortified, I just wagged it. And it's amazing. And it's that kind of freedom. Like I genuinely, what I asked you on one of the videos recently, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. You asked me to talk about something. I was like, I need a hint. I don't actually know what you're saying. That was the time that I literally had written it down though. Like I wrote it on the Post-it note.
Right. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's just, that's the freedom. And that's the little stuff that like, we don't put on the ECCP like page, right? Like, oh, you'll be comfortable to wag your tail, on camera. But it's getting your life back. And that's priceless. Are you kidding me? $2,497 to have my life back? What he said. Yeah. Yeah.
That's beautiful and powerful, and probably a great bow to wrap this conversational package up with. So thank you for that. Thank you for the presence and the freedom to wag your tail, as you said in that YouTube video. And for those of you that haven't seen it, go watch it. This is the one on the grow model. Is that the title?
Yeah. Michelle said Cheez-Its and tail wagging.
Yes, exactly. So for those of you that want to check that out, go watch it. But what you said, we talk a lot about how it's impossible to articulate these kinds of changes. So for you to say, it'll give you the freedom to wag your tail on camera. Like, of course, that's silly. And most people are like, that's not what I'm trying to do in my life.
Right.
Is wag my tail on camera. But the gravity of that statement, knowing, as you just shared, a part of your story over the last several minutes, the gravity of that statement is really, really profound. Yeah. And even just continuing to talk while your dogs are barking here, and just, oh well, like that's happening right on cue. Right on cue.
I told them the other day, I was like, you guys don't even know how really popular you are. You're on
Right.
a very popular YouTube channel. People know who you are. They know your name.
And now they've seen your tail. Right. So
Yeah.
thank you for all of that. I think it's incredibly profound. And for those of you that are coming to ECCP, we can't wait for you to have your version of your tail wagging moment.
Yes. Beep, beep.
Perfect. Thank you, Michelle. This is
Thank you,
great.
Sean. Bye, everyone.
I'll talk to you all soon.